that before you roll, you guess the color of the space you're gonna land on.
Ooh.
And if you get it right, you move forward a multiplier based on how many times you get it right. But if you get it wrong, you have to move back one space. So it could save you from a mistake, but it could also force you to do it.
Interesting. I could see a house rule for that being something like the number of times you get it right in a row multiplies the multiplier. So you have a reason to try to guess it correctly multiple times in a row, and maybe that gives you some additional options. That's a really cool idea. How did that turn out? Did that seem fun to play?
I felt like it made the game longer.
Yeah.
It was kind of
Was
fun.
it more fun longer, or did it seem to drag out longer for no
I
fun
think it
reasons?
was more fun longer, especially as you kind of like start thinking about how can I be better at guessing.
Yeah, it's at least engaging on some level, which is really what's important if we're going to make this fun for adults. Other people, what did you do? So many options. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to circle around, hopefully give everyone a chance to talk.
So my group of three, we came up with a nice. It's still essentially snakes and ladders, except we're rolling 3d6. And then a couple things, it's still race to the top. But when you roll your 3, you have to choose one. And for each one you don't choose, you add 1 to it. So you can either choose 1, 2, or 3, you have to choose at least one. And the rest you don't pick, add 1. So it kind of modifies where you can go.
Yeah.
On a doubles, it switches to ladders and snakes. So if you roll doubles first turn, you can use that first snake and just go right on up. Other than that, if you land on the same square as someone else, it bumps them back a row. And if you roll triples, it bumps everyone but yourself back a row.
Ooh, interesting. And that row can be very different because of the snaking nature of the board. You might only be knocking them back a few spaces, but you might be knocking them back significantly more than 10 spaces as well. So when you choose to roll 2 might be based on where your opponents are and how far you could knock them back.
And then I think the last thing is you don't win when you get to 100. You have to be exactly on 100.
Okay.
If you go over, you go back down rows depending on how over you go.
Ooh, scary. I like it. I'm close to the end of the game, but who knows how close to the end I really am.
We found there's that like one, we swapped it and there's like the one snake that goes like 3 away. But that's really hard to get exactly 3 onto 100.
You need at least 1/1 in your rolls.
Yeah, you don't
Right.
Sacrifice to win.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. How did it feel?
It was fun. It was a lot closer and things could spread out or get closer very quick.
Yeah.
Especially because you can get larger numbers like up to 18 on a roll and move.
Did it ever feel like even getting close to the end, did you start to feel like there's no way this game is going to end unless I get very lucky with this? Or did it start to feel like getting close to the end was less and less important? That would be the only concern I would have with that rule is how close are you to winning? I don't know. And that could be a little disheartening to a player, but it sounds like it's at least worth very fun to try out. Who else? All right, the hand I had seen first was here, and then I'll do back and here. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Instead of dice, we used a deck of cards. So like the numbers would be how far you can move, and the face cards would give you like some ability like to switch places with your opponent or to send them back to a snake or something like that.
Okay. How did that feel? Was it possible to win the game at that point, or was it?
Yeah, we had to make it like they did where you have to be exactly on 100. And if not, then instead of like going down, you just loop back that number of moves.
Okay.
Yeah, and we kind of took the face cards, so including jokers, and we integrated kind of like a Monopoly deal style rule with those, where those had their own custom action.
Okay.
So let's see, our queen allowed you to burn a card. The king took your opponent back to the last ladder. The jack was a 1, since there's no 1 in a deck, and then what's the joker?
Yeah, the jokers would switch you.
The joker swaps the positions of the players, and then the ace card was a card that you could use when your opponent used one of those cards against you to like essentially negate their move. So we ended up using 3 aces in 1 turn. So where where one player played an ace and then the other player played their ace, and then
Sounds like exploding kittens now.
You can do surprisingly complicated things. The design space for this is massive. There's a lot you can do with this. It seems like there isn't coming from a game with no player agency, but the design space is actually quite large. What else? Yeah.
We did stuff with a deck of cards as well.
Mhm.
But what we did is that we had each player like draws 5 cards into their hand. And then they play the card that they want to move. And then once they've played all their cards, they get to redraw.
Ah,
So we disabled the ladder running from 28 to 78. Because it just kind of felt like if you got lucky enough to land on that ladder, you just won. And for our face cards, we had jokers. Jokers let you pick up to 3 of your opponent's cards to discard. Which is really interesting because you can actually force your opponent, you can force them to land on a snake if you play that right. Kings, if you play king immediately after your opponent plays the card, you have to go backwards that number of spaces.
so I have a question for you. Is your opponent's hand public information?
Yes,
Okay, so that makes it really strategic to play that, because
Yeah.
you're aware that you're pigeonholing them into going into a snake.
yes.
I like it.
Queens just skip the other player's turn and aces discard. Jokers are, you select up how many spaces you want to move up to 10.
Nice. That sounds like really interesting design, something that's fun to play. Did you experience that as well? Was it engaging and fun to play?
Yeah, it also moved pretty quickly, which I do think is a feature.
Yeah, that can be very useful, especially if you're trying to play more games and you don't want losing to feel really bad. One way to get around that is to have lightning fast rounds where a winner is very quickly determined or a loser is very quickly determined. All right, who else? Hand over here? Yeah.
Yeah, so we added kind of a system where if you land on a space that is where the number is a prime number, you get to roll the d6 again to get one of to basically get an extra power. 3 of those you can use on your turn to either swap with another player, to go to the nearest ladder or to send someone else to the nearest snake. Or you can use it after any roll to re-roll your roll or cause someone else to re-roll theirs. To move backwards instead of forwards, or cause someone else to move backwards instead of forwards, or to add 1 or subtract 1 from any roll.
Interesting. Now I'm imagining using this as a learning game for learning prime numbers, because if you didn't label the numbers as prime numbers, maybe once you land, you have 3 seconds to say, yes, this is a prime number, or no, this is not a prime number.
We had to look a couple of them up.
Yeah. And then if you're right about it being a prime number, then you get the benefit. I mean, there's a detriment if you say that's a prime number and it's not actually a prime number.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
And it did, after half an hour, actually did end. We had a winner.
Yeah.
Fun, cool.
And it did add a lot of like, it did add a lot of strategy.
Yeah.
And the ability to, do you use those powers or do you save them up?
Those are all really interesting decisions. Anyone else want to share what they came up with? Yeah.
We did it so there's like you roll a D9 for an item to use after each player's turn, and each item has like different things, kind of similar to what he was saying. Like there's one where you can swap places with the player. I turned it in, but or like add 3 to your next roll, stuff like that. I either go up 1 row or go down, or another one's enemy goes down 1 row. We also made it so there's like a long snake at 100 back to 1, but when you reach 100 space, you get like a diamond or a crown, and when you get 3 of those, that's when you can.
Okay.
And also we made it so if each player lands on the same spot, they have to battle each other, like tic-tac-toe or rock, paper, scissors.
Some kind of game.
1v1.
Okay.
And
I like it.
the winner, they both roll. And if the winner of the game has a higher number than the loser, they can steal the crown.
Interesting. That makes a really interesting late game of really trying to chase your opponent if they're about to win and you need something to win. Rather than trying to get to 100, you're actually trying to catch your opponent. Interesting. Interesting. Lots of very different ideas. Anyone else want to share?
I had an idea, but I wasn't sure how to make it happen, but I wanted to add some kind of skill-based quick time thing that you could do to avoid having to take a snake.
Ooh, interesting. That, as someone with a gamification background, that intrigues me. You could now use this to teach whatever it is that you wanted to teach. You're playing a game, but to avoid this, now you have to answer a rapid fire math question or,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah,
I was thinking,
some
like,
kind of-
factors or something
yeah.
of the numbers.
yeah. Cool. I like that a lot.
Or you can make it like the Asian game where it's the hat and the hammer.
Yeah.
You quickly gotta grab the hat before someone hits you on the head with like a rubber mallet.
Other ideas? Yeah.
So I was thinking like all the ideas of like the card game ones, and now I'm kind of thinking like, ever played the board game like Wingspan?
Yes.
I was thinking like something like that where it's a card drafting game where you
Yeah.
get the different abilities. I like the ideas of it, where it's like you start with 2, and your turn you can either use a card from your hand, draw a card, or take one from the discard.
Yeah.
Something like
Interesting.
that. Use the powers the same way, but it's card drafting, and maybe using a card might not be advantageous if someone else can use it.
Would allow you, if you play cards, maybe to be able to dictate what the next person does. You
Yeah.
could take something away from them or give them something they don't want.
Or it's like you can only play the top of the discard, so it's like, well, whatever I play next could come back to bite me in the butt.
Yeah, interesting. That could add a lot of strategy. Want to add? Storing dice rolls. Okay, yeah. So what are you doing with that history? Are you able to reuse dice? Are you able to combine them or?
Yeah, very proud of that.
It's an interesting idea where whatever it is that happens gets put into a history of some kind that you can manipulate. And that way you need to be aware of that. And maybe the game gets more and more complicated as that history starts to grow. That's interesting. Have just a few more minutes. Anyone want to share what their experience was? Yeah.
So we kind of had like an itemization aspect where like we had like ladder oil. So if you got to the top of a ladder, you could you would get ladder oil. You could choose to use it then or use it on like a later one. If you fell down a snake, then you would get like the snake prongs so that you could hold on to it and avoid another snake in the future. And we tested those out, and they didn't occur frequently enough, I think, to be able to utilize them effectively. So we probably, if we could choose to place more on the board, and then we were also thinking about having a couple more items that we didn't get around to testing. And one would be like a rope that served as like a climbing rope. So as you climb up, like you would eventually get a rope. You'd roll like a D6 or a D12 or something, and that would be like the safety link, right? So if you hit a snake and you had rolled a 6, then you're only allowed to go back 6 spaces instead of wherever the snake takes you. And then we also played with the idea of like a portal item, where if you get the portal, then you can place a portal anywhere on the map, but it's only one portal. So the next time somebody else gets a portal, they can place that portal somewhere else on the map, and then the 2 portals link. So like you can use it strategically, like you can place one at the end in the hopes that you or someone else lands on another portal, uses it so you could jump straight to the end of the map, or you can place it at the very beginning in the hopes that you sabotage somebody along the way so that they land on a portal and end up teleporting back to the beginning.
Right on the snake.
I like that. That adds some player agency to the snake idea and the ladder idea combined into one. Huh. I like it. Very cool. Some really good ideas in here. It's unfortunate that we can't just do this for the rest of the quarter. I think it would be a lot of fun to just continue to iterate on this and make a really interesting game that maybe you could decide that you could sell on the market. But we're going to come back tomorrow and start to think about some additional. We started talking about the ways of thinking of understanding games. We're going to hop back into that for a bit, but not for too long, because I have about 8 of these in-class activities planned throughout the quarter. So we're going to be doing a lot more in-class activities over time. We'll probably table it for a little bit, but we'll be coming back and doing more type stuff like this as we learn more.
That's what.
See you tomorrow.